Yesterday we watched The Whale, starring Brendan Fraser, the start of the Brenissance.
The brenissance.
The Brenissance is here. So Aiden, what's the plot of The Whale?
The Whale is about a 600-pound man named Charlie who lives in his home. He's too big to leave, too embarrassed to leave. He's pushed away his family. Before the events of the movie, he left his wife and daughter for a man because he's gay, which damaged his relationship with them. And as he feels like he's approaching the end of his life, he decides he wants to reconnect with his daughter, and also forms connections with a bunch of other people who come by and are in and out of his life. And yeah. Connor, what do you think of The Whale?
Darren Aronofsky's back, baby. I wasn't a big fan of Darren Aronofsky's last movie, Mother, which was an obnoxious movie about religion bad that he made to fuck Jennifer Lawrence. And
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to say it, but I'm just laying out the facts.
Yep. You're right.
This movie, however, was very good. Brendan Fraser was brought out of retirement essentially for this movie.
He's been
I know
vindicated.
he's kind of been coming back lately. In general,
He was blacklisted for a lot of years.
getting a lot of projects again.
Because he came out with his Me Too thing. Well,
Yeah,
before that
because
popular.
he was groped by a man, the Hollywood producer, and kind of got blacklisted after that. But he's back with all sorts of projects on his docket and ready to prove the world that Brendan Fraser's a great actor. And this movie
Projects
backs
like
that up.
that.
Batgirl. The cancel project Batgirl. Not everything is a win. Brendan Fraser's not out of the water. He's still got some L's to take. But this movie was definitely a big dub for Brendan Fraser.
Oh, for sure.
As it was an amazing performance. Along with a lot of his starring colleagues. For one, his at-home nurse and friend, I can't remember her name. She was the waitress from The Menu.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's had a big year with 2 movies we really loved.
Yeah, for sure.
But it was just a lot of great performances. It was kind of a bottle movie. Everything taking place in Brendan Fraser's apartment. And it's just kind of trying to humanize this group of people that general society might view as kind of a joke. Being the extremely morbidly obese who mostly just have their lives portrayed in tasteless and tactless TLC documentaries making fun of them.
Yeah.
So
Big
it very
people,
much
yeah.
humanizes him, and it questions why he is the way he is. There's a lot about religious trauma in there. Not necessarily saying
Sexuality and...
yeah. Not necessarily saying religion bad per se, but also just talking about religion. And you have aspects of how sexuality affected him and his partner, and how it led his partner to basically starve himself, which ultimately led to his death, becoming bulimic, and him, and of course Charlie, whose death is a result of overeating. Both trauma from abandoning his child, the guilt with that, his religious trauma growing up in this city in Idaho, and also so you have it really talks about trauma and guilt, and it definitely frames this in an aspect of being about Charlie's mental illness. And in terms of Darren Aronofsky, it feels like you're going back to a lot of like Requiem for a Dream and stuff. His early films.
It's not a
where
crazy over the top.
It's not a crazy
shit fuck.
pretentious thing saying look at this, religion bad, or
There's not.
look at this. You're not, like, a lot of his most recent films feel like they're condemning people that Darren Aronofsky seems as lesser. This doesn't necessarily challenge that. I'm not a religious person, but it's not about challenging religion per se. It's more about the trauma that can come around with the idea of it, especially since he seems chastised for not only adultery but also homosexuality. And it makes for a very interesting tale. Of course, I thought all the performances in it were very great. The character arcs are understandable. It's very powerful. And it's very well shot. And Darren Aronofsky left a lot of his pretensions we see in movies like Mother at the door and just made a very sound product. So, where I found Mother to be pretentious and obnoxious, I found this movie a lot more endearing and interesting. And ultimately, a very good character arc for a handful of characters who each get an adequate amount of screen time, get to say what they have to say, and as characters, you understand everyone's perspective and why they feel that way. And it's actually a very well presented movie, and it's well shot. And it's definitely validates the brenissance beyond actually being a meme of, what if that guy from The Mummy fucked my life up, you know, type of shit. So
Yeah.
it was very good. It's definitely one of my favorite movies of 2022. And it's unfortunate that, at least in Minnesota, it didn't really come to theaters until 2023 because Avatar's a bitch.
Yeah, we
man.
delayed our year-end list for this.
Yeah, we delayed our year-end list by a couple of weeks because it was very hard to track this movie down. I'm sure it's not just Minnesota, but a lot of markets that are having a hard time slotting it in because Disney owns theaters with The Menu, which is an amazing movie, and Avatar, which is an amazing movie, and Black Panther, which is okay, but it still needs to be played in 2 or 3 auditoriums a day. So it's very hard to find this movie, but I would recommend tracking it down for theaters. So Aiden, what are your thoughts on The Whale?
The Whale is very nice. To get some Aronofsky things out of the way, I'm glad that this movie is really simple. It takes place in one apartment. There's no wacky visuals, you know. After Black Swan had a lot of like wacky visuals and kind of went out there with visuals, and it works in that movie. I think that movie's good. But when it came to like Mother, it was just like complete visual and auditory vomit, where it was just shit everywhere, and made that movie unbearable for me. This movie strips it back, really nice and simple. I like a lot. This movie has a lot of isolated characters who kind of recenter themselves around Charlie. Like obviously Charlie himself, he isolates himself. He doesn't want to go to the doctor or the hospital because he's ashamed of how he's ended up, but his daughter feels isolated because she doesn't get along with other kids because of the situation with Charlie. His ex-wife is isolated. His friend who comes by to help him with nursing stuff was a part of the religious group and fell out of that as a child.
Trying to make almost in a lot of ways, it feels like she's trying to make amends for her guilt from religion by channeling it through Charlie.
And then
she's very accusatory of how Charlie's husband died too.
Her brother is Charlie's boyfriend who kills himself because he's cut off from his church because of his thing. And then there's also this missionary character who comes in and out, who's been separated from his family because of his drug abuse. So you have a lot of isolated characters who kind of circle around Charlie, and he brings a lot of positivity to them despite like how terrible his position is. I think that's like a really sweet aspect of the story. You know, it's very, very tragic for Charlie. The whole thing is like, it's pretty depressing and dour of a movie, but at the same time, you know, he brings a lot of happiness and hope to people. I think it's a really nice story, and you get to see a lot of sweet character interactions. Brendan Fraser's fucking incredible. The balls it took to play a stinky 600-pound man who vomits all over himself and weeps like a fucking child and is all red and disgusting. The balls on that performance is great, but he also just like fucking kills it and sells it, and it's...
You gotta respect it, because even though I feel Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise and other 80s and 90s superstars from the class of Brendan Fraser, or from the same era as Fraser, have been reaching their peak. Like, I think Tom Cruise is doing some of his best stuff ever. I think Brad Pitt's been doing some of his best stuff ever. But you have to respect that he's willing to do a role like this when you definitely know his contemporaries wouldn't. And it's also more relatable to Fraser as somebody who kind of is a chastised outcast like Charlie. Like, he was chastised for ultimately kind of getting kicked out of Hollywood with his whole Me Too scandal. So it's interesting. I don't think many people could pull it off like Brendan Fraser did, having that personal experience.
He's extremely good, and this movie would not work without him. He's super, super powerful.
Also, if you look at interviews and stuff, he acts with a lot of class and tact when it comes to discussing Charlie and humanizing him.
For sure.
And it's definitely easy, like I said, rounding back to like TLC shows, it's easy to dehumanize these people. But Charlie's clearly a kind person who has his issues, but impacts these people greatly. People who might be chastised by society and generally be deemed highly irregular and dehumanized. So I thought it was a performance very few actors could pull off. So on Aronofsky's part in the casting team, I have to say it was an amazing choice.
Yeah, it's really good. He's really good. It's sweet, tragic. It's amazing performances all around. It's really incredible. It's good.
Right.
I think I have said everything there is to say about it. So Connor, would you recommend The Whale?
I would definitely recommend The Whale. I think, it's not for everyone, but you definitely have to go in with a mindset of, we saw this movie with a couple religious people. They were a little bit against the idea. I don't think this movie's anti-Christian.
No.
I really don't think so. I think you have to go in with the correct mindset to watch this movie.
I don't even think the movie particularly is against the character in this movie who is religious. Just that he's narrow-minded in the way he tries to help Charlie, but he's still affected by Charlie. And he's not like a terrible person, he's just a fucking idiot.
Right, and everybody's coming at Charlie with different solutions. You have Liz, I believe her name is, who looks at it very medically. You have the wife, who just wants him to listen to others' advice. The daughter's taking advantage of him, and the missionary, who ultimately thinks he can solve all of Charlie's problems through religion. But Charlie's problems, what Charlie comes to realize is it's partially self-inflicted. And he fears the afterlife because he feels responsible for the situation he's in. and he doesn't want his husband to see him, so he fears the afterlife, which I think is an interesting aspect of this movie. But not to go off topic or get back into this movie more, because I think people should see it. And I feel like analyzing this movie for you guys would be... I mean, I've already analyzed it for you guys, sorry.
We've said enough.
We said enough, that's my point. I recommend the movie, it's very good. It's one of my favorites of the year. So Aiden, would you recommend The Whale?
Absolutely. Easy recommend. Wonderful, very touching. Made me tear up a little bit. Great. Perfect.
Great.